What if I told you that everything you've been watching on Married at First Sight Australia is a lie? The drama, the love, and the so-called perfect relationships are nothing more than toxic manipulation and emotional abuse disguised as entertainment. Stick around as I expose the truth about why this show is doing more harm than good and why you should stop watching it now. Welcome to the unfiltered truth behind Married at First Sight Australia, a show that many claim is less about love and more about manufactured chaos. Every week, millions tune in to watch what appears to be a radical experiment in romance. But behind the glitz and drama lies a disturbing pattern of emotional abuse, toxic behavior, and coercive control that not only damages the lives of its participants but also warps our perception of healthy relationships. Over the years, former contestants have come forward with chilling stories about how Married at First Sight Australia isn't just a reality show. It's a toxic environment that fosters emotional manipulation and abuse. One of the most disturbing examples of this comes from the relationship between Paul Antoine and Karina Mirabili. Karina entered the experiment hoping for a genuine connection, believing that the show was a chance for her to meet someone real, someone who would value her. But what she didn't expect was the psychological torment she'd face behind the scenes. At first, it seemed like an ordinary couple's disagreement. Paul and Karina didn't quite click on some aspects. But as the weeks went by, things took a darker turn. During one particularly heated argument, Paul, in an outburst of rage, punched a hole in the wall, a shocking display of aggression that should have been a red flag for both Karina and the audience. But that wasn't where the manipulation stopped. Paul's anger wasn't confined to physical outbursts. He expertly wielded a much more insidious form of control, gaslighting. Every time Karina expressed her feelings or concerns, Paul would brush them off, belittle them, or even twist her words to make her question her reality. It was as if every time Karina tried to explain herself, Paul would make her feel like she was overreacting or imagining things. One moment, she'd be upset about a comment Paul made, only for him to turn it around and accuse her of being too sensitive, of not seeing things the right way. Karina began to doubt herself, questioning whether she was the one at fault for the tension in their relationship. Paul's emotional manipulation was relentless. He would minimize her concerns, twist her words, and make her feel as if she was the one to blame for every argument. The result was that Karina, someone who had come on the show with hopes of finding love, was now questioning her own perceptions of what was real. This was no longer a relationship. It was a psychological battle. And it wasn't just Paul's actions that caused harm. It was the show's entire environment that perpetuated this cycle. MAFS creates a space where contestants are vulnerable, under intense scrutiny, and desperate for validation. The pressure to perform for the cameras, to be seen as a perfect couple or as engaging television, only exacerbates the toxic behaviors. For Karina, every small disagreement became a public spectacle, every moment of vulnerability twisted into something for the cameras. The producers and the show's structure encourage these cycles of emotional degradation, prioritizing drama over the well-being of the participants. This is not just an isolated incident. What happened to Karina and Paul is just one example of how MAFS systematically cultivates toxic relationships by amplifying unhealthy dynamics for the sake of ratings. Contestants are pushed into extreme emotional distress, where they are often left feeling isolated, disoriented, and broken. And for viewers at home, the true cost of this manipulated reality is only realized once they see the long-term damage that these relationships have caused. Adding another unsettling layer to this already toxic narrative, former contestant Jessica Power has openly raised serious doubts about the authenticity of the show's portrayal of romance. Jessica, who herself was embroiled in one of MAFS' most controversial and headline-grabbing seasons, has made no secret of a belief that the entire premise of the show may be more about orchestrated drama than about real relationships. Jessica wasn't the only one to question the sincerity of the show's dynamics. As the years passed, she began to notice that some of the so-called perfect couples, the ones the producers presented as the ideal models of romantic success, might not be as genuine as viewers were led to believe. Among them, she specifically pointed to the couple who had become fan favorites, Cam Merchant and Jules Robinson. On the surface, Cam and Jules seemed like the perfect couple, the sweet, lovable pair who appeared to embody everything the show was supposed to represent. Love at first sight, mutual respect, and emotional connection. They were constantly lauded as a golden couple, with viewers cheering them on, believing that their relationship was everything they had hoped for when they signed up for the experiment. But Jessica, who witnessed the behind-the-scenes dynamics firsthand, speculated that their connection might have been a bit more complex than it appeared. She openly suggested that Cam and Jules might have had some pre-existing connection before the cameras even started rolling. Perhaps they had met before the show, or maybe they had been encouraged to act as though they had an instant spark in front of the audience. Whether or not Jessica's claims are true is still up for debate, but the mere suggestion opened a Pandora's box of uncomfortable possibilities. If there was any truth to Jessica's speculation, it raised a much bigger issue. Could it be that the entire narrative of Married at First Sight was carefully manipulated for the sake of creating the perfect, idealized love story for viewers? The show's producers are notorious for creating fairy tale relationships, couples that fit neatly into the narrative of destiny and true love. But Jessica's claims highlighted the dark truth behind the glossy facade. Reality TV is more about creating compelling storylines and showcasing genuine emotional connections. It's not just the so-called golden couples who might be artificially created. Jessica's comments imply that the relationships we see on screen, whether they end in fairy tale romance or disastrous breakups, are all part of a much larger, orchestrated production. The contestants are carefully selected, paired with someone based on chemistry that could be fabricated, and then thrust into a series of high-stakes situations designed to draw out dramatic emotions and conflicts. In the end, what's sold to the audience as real love could very well be scripted entertainment. When reality is manipulated in this way, it blurs the line between what's real and what's manufactured. While we might think we are watching authentic, raw human connections unfold on screen, we could be witnessing something very different. A carefully constructed narrative designed to hook viewers, keep them invested, and generate ratings. This is where the problem lies. When relationships, especially ones that involve deep emotional vulnerability, are turned into scripted entertainment, the real-life consequences of abuse, manipulation, and emotional distress become less of a concern. Instead, the focus shifts to how well the contestants can perform for the cameras. For viewers at home, this leaves them with a distorted idea of what real love and real relationships should look like. The line between reality and entertainment fades, and soon, toxic behaviors like emotional manipulation, control, and deceit become normalized as just part of the game. Jessica's allegations, whether or not they hold any weight, serve as a stark reminder that when it comes to reality TV, we may be watching a story, not real people navigating the complexities of love, trust, and commitment. And that's the danger. The more reality is manipulated for the sake of ratings, the more we risk losing sight of what healthy relationships truly look like. When the show's producers care more about ratings than the well-being of their contestants, the consequences extend far beyond the cameras. It's not just about creating drama for a season. It's about perpetuating a toxic narrative that audiences may start to accept as a norm in their own lives. Toxic behavior on MAFS extends beyond individual interactions. Many contestants have admitted that the show's production environment exacerbates these issues. Contestants are often put under intense pressure to perform, with producers reportedly encouraging heightened drama and conflict. In one infamous season, a couple's explosive public breakdown was later revealed by insiders to have been partly orchestrated to boost ratings. The scripted nature of these conflicts, where minor disagreements are blown out of proportion, creates a warped image of what relationships should look like. Instead of promoting genuine connection and mutual respect, the show glorifies manipulation, constant fighting, and emotional roller coasters as the hallmarks of passion. This toxic narrative has real consequences. Viewers, particularly younger audiences, are bombarded with a version of romance where emotional abuse, control, and manipulation are not only normalized but sometimes even romanticized. One viewer tearfully shared how watching repeated cycles of gaslighting and controlling behavior on MAFS left her feeling desensitized to similar red flags in her own relationships. The dangerous allure of these manufactured conflicts can blur the line between dramatic television and acceptable behavior in real life. When we see love defined by suffering and control, it becomes harder to recognize and reject these harmful dynamics when they appear in our everyday lives. The reality is that by prioritizing shock value and extreme emotional reactions, Married at First Sight Australia contributes to a culture that trivializes serious issues like coercive control and emotional abuse. Instead of exploring the complexities of genuine love and commitment, the show exploits vulnerability for entertainment, leaving a lasting impact on both its contestants and its audience. It perpetuates the myth that true love involves constant struggle, manipulation, and even humiliation, which can have long-term effects on how we understand and engage in relationships. Before you click play on another episode of Manufactured Mayhem, consider the impact this content may have on your own life. Ask yourself whether the toxic portrayal of relationships on MAFS is truly worth the cost. Real love should empower you, nurture you, and build you up, not leave you questioning your worth or your reality. The manufactured drama may be entertaining in the moment, but the long-term effects on your mental health and your view of intimacy can be profound and damaging. It's time to demand better from our media. Let's seek out stories that celebrate mutual respect, genuine connection, and healthy communication. Instead of normalizing emotional abuse and coercive control, let's promote narratives that uplift and empower. The toxic truth is out there, and it's our responsibility to choose content that not only entertains but also enriches our understanding of what real love looks like. Say no to the normalization of abuse masquerading as romance, and say yes to a healthier, happier view of relationships. Australia's reality TV shows, like Married at First Sight, have become cultural phenomena. They are watched by millions, and yet there's a darker truth that few want to talk about. These shows are contributing to the growing issues of domestic violence and rising divorce rates in our society. While reality TV is marketed as light-hearted entertainment, the toxic behaviors it glorifies are slowly seeping into the fabric of our relationships, normalizing emotional abuse, manipulation, and unhealthy dynamics. And the consequences? They are more damaging than we realize. Think about it. Every season, we are bombarded with extreme emotional confrontations, public humiliations, and relationship breakdowns, all under the guise of real love. But what Married at First Sight and similar shows don't show us are the psychological scars left behind. The manipulation, the gaslighting, the controlling behavior. It's all packaged as entertainment, but it sets a dangerous precedent for viewers. It becomes a blueprint for what relationships can look like, and for some, it's not just entertainment. It's a reality they start to emulate. Domestic violence doesn't always start with physical abuse. It starts with the breakdown of boundaries, emotional manipulation, and control, exactly what we see normalized in these reality shows. Contestants on MAFS are often subjected to harsh emotional pressure, and when this becomes a norm for how relationships are portrayed, it sends a dangerous message to the audience. This behavior is acceptable. One of the most troubling things about the show is how it normalizes verbal degradation, emotional abuse, and toxic conflict. When viewers witness a partner belittling or controlling the other on screen, they begin to lose sight of what healthy, respectful relationships truly look like. This normalization of toxic behaviors is not just a media issue, it's a social issue. The patterns we see on screen can trickle into real life. For many people watching these shows, especially those in vulnerable or abusive relationships themselves, the abusive behaviors portrayed can start to feel normal or even expected. When a contestant on MAFS is gaslighted, made to feel like they are overreacting, or emotionally manipulated, it sets a precedent that this is just part of love. It creates a dangerous cycle where viewers start to accept such behavior as normal in their own relationships. This doesn't just affect one person. It can affect entire families, creating toxic cycles of behavior that can last for years. As if that wasn't enough, these toxic portrayals also contribute to the rising divorce rates in Australia. The pressure to meet unrealistic expectations in relationships, driven by the media's portrayal of romance, is more than overwhelming. MAFS puts contestants under extreme pressure to make a relationship work, often forcing them into environments where they are emotionally manipulated, isolated, and vulnerable. The outcome? Many of these relationships end in divorce or leave lasting emotional damage. When audiences are constantly exposed to these types of unhealthy, high-drama relationships, they may start to believe that every relationship is supposed to be a struggle, a battle of power, control, and conflict. This warped view of love and commitment directly impacts how people approach their own relationships. This emotional toll isn't just felt by the contestants on the show, it affects everyone watching. Studies have shown that exposure to toxic relationship dynamics in media, especially when it comes to reality TV, can shape our beliefs and expectations about love. So, when viewers see emotional abuse, verbal aggression, or unhealthy power dynamics portrayed as normal or even desirable, they may internalize these behaviors as acceptable in their own relationships. This toxic media cycle perpetuates cycles of dysfunction, making it harder for people to identify healthy, loving relationships when they encounter them. What's even more concerning is how these shows manipulate emotions for ratings. The producers understand that viewers are drawn to drama, conflict, and confrontation. But what they fail to realize, or choose to ignore, is the long-term impact this has on societal norms and values. The abuse, manipulation, and emotional warfare presented as drama make it harder for audiences to distinguish what's real from what's harmful. And as this toxic content becomes more and more normalized, we see the consequences in the real world. Higher divorce rates, more people trapped in unhealthy relationships, and an increase in domestic violence. We need to ask ourselves, what kind of message are we sending about relationships? Are we telling people that love is about struggle, manipulation, and emotional chaos? Or are we encouraging healthy communication, respect, and mutual understanding? It's time to rethink what we are watching, what we are supporting, and how we are allowing these toxic narratives to shape our perceptions of love. We deserve better. It's time to demand content that uplifts, empowers, and nurtures real, healthy relationships. And it's time for us to stop normalizing the behaviors that lead to pain, heartbreak, and, ultimately, domestic violence.